Okay, let's get started. Um, just to begin, to lay out the itinerary we have for today, the first part of this presentation is going to be about federal funding generally uh, and how it works, what the mechanisms are. The second part is going to be focused completely on the opportunities available in the first quarter of 2021. And then the last part, I'm going to talk a little bit about Eagle Point funding. And uh, I guess the real last part is going to be the Q&A session at the end. Feel free to post any questions you have in not the chat, but there's a Q&A portal. Again, if you want to use the chat, you can as well. I'll try to get to them, but the Q&A portal is where I'll be able to answer them most effectively. With that, let's begin. Okay, so that's my beautiful face. And right next to me is a QR code that if you want to set up a call to talk about your individual situation or have any specific questions when it comes to federal funding, more than happy to discuss. All right, starting from the top, um, what you'll see here is a beautiful chart of the federal research and development budget for 2020. The reason that we're showing the 2020 budget is because the 2021 budget has not come out yet. It's due to be released in March. With the addition of the changing administrations, things change, and so it's due to come out in March, but it could be a little bit later, could be a little bit earlier. And so, as you can see from the chart, around 30 to 60 billion dollars is invested, or not invested, but given to private companies in order to foster innovation and research and development. So basically, the reason the US government does this is because they want to keep America on the cutting edge, and they want to continue having um, really interesting companies that can help, their agencies, as well as keep America um, at the forefront of most technologies. One quick thing about 2021, I've gotten this question a few times. Uh, do, do we think that the budget is going to be less for 2021? The trends that have been in the past that are unlikely to change have indicated that the budget for research and development funding has only grown. So I think it's fairly safe to say that the budget's either going to be similar or maybe even more. In addition to that, there was attempted cutbacks, I think, recently, but again, they continued having a pretty solid budget despite that. So here we talk a little bit about dilutive funding versus non-dilutive funding. So dilutive funding is your classic angel investor, venture capital. Essentially, whenever you have them fund your company, you have to give something up in return, right? They're not just going to give you money and say, "Hey, go crazy with it. This is for you." Um, they they want a piece of your company. With non-dilutive funding, the government doesn't necessarily want to run your company. They don't want to get involved in your company's politics, or who's on the board, who's not on the board, how we're going to run it. They don't care about that. What they do care about is your tech project or your research and development project, and they want you to develop it the way you want to develop it. And a few other things that are listed here that aren't immediately thought of is that with non-dilutive funding, with federal grants, they do sometimes come with federal contracts, which is great because the US government's one of the most stable um, clients one could have. So it makes a lot of sense to want them on board with you and to be one of your, not even the shareholder, but one of your partners, right? Okay, so this slide talks a little bit about the the, the main agencies that have been funding small businesses. Um, if you look, the DoD is by far and large the largest funder, and there's a few reasons for this. The main one being is that they have many subsidiaries. These subsidiaries are very serious branches. One of the most notable subsidiaries is the Air Force, they've come up with their own program called AFWorks that we're going to talk a little bit about later. But essentially, the DoD turns to small businesses quite a bit in order to solve agency challenges, because that's what makes the most sense. Rather than developing these technologies in-house, it makes the most sense to turn to, the American small businesses and say, hey, what can you guys do for us? What do you guys have? So these are a few of the industries that are basically up for grants. If you don't see your industry up here, that's nothing to worry about, because if you see the additional topics, it's even longer than this, but we had to cut it to keep it on the slide. But essentially, almost any heavy technology you could think of, they're interested in looking at. And one nice thing about the U.S. federal government is they understand how little they know about technology. So on almost every single solicitation, they talk a little about open topics. And the open topics are essentially saying, hey, we know what we have, but we don't know what we don't have. So if you're able to come up with a technology, or you have a technology that can really contribute to us, we're more than happy to look at it. And so again, if you don't see your name on this list, that's fine. That being said, the list is quite robust. So SBIR winners in general have a better chance of gaining funding from investors further down the line. One testament to this is we are hosting, Eagle Point Funding is hosting a deep tech showcase where we're connecting investors with companies that have won federal funding in the past. Again, if you want to talk to me about that, you can also set up a call. But essentially, when they see that you've won federal funding, it means that someone in the government said, these guys are onto something. And that leads investors to say, hey, we should get on board with this because this is already going places. And then this is a study done by the Milken Institute, basically saying that having won federal funding is like a golden seal of approval. It gives a little nice statistic about how for every dollar that goes in federal funding, usually you see $8.38 in private investment within the next 8 years. So it is quite powerful. And again, it ensures that you're going to make it to the next stage, right? So you want to get to the next goalpost, and it really does help with that because, as I said, you have someone who one of the largest entities in the world, the U.S. federal government, is backing you. Okay, to jump into grant mechanisms, there's three main mechanisms that we're going to talk about. Small business innovation and research are basically 3.2% of the overall pie. Small business technology transfer, which are essentially, they are companies, they're available to companies that have partnered with a university. And so they're extremely interesting. If you are partnered with a university, also talk to me about it, because you're able to apply to interesting opportunities that aren't available to everyone else. Lastly, with the biggest chunk of the pie are broad agency announcements. And those are broad, as the title states. Essentially, they're open to any company. So for the other two, the small business innovation research and technology transfer, you have to have less than 500 employees and follow a few other rules that we'll get into. With broad agency announcements, you aren't as restricted. So a lot of the funding does go into, you're competing with larger companies. Sorry about that. Seems like I skipped to the end. Okay, so small business innovation and research grants, they're usually phased funding. And so the following criteria must apply. So like I was saying, you have to have under 500 employees. The research and development needs to be in the USA, and less than 50% ownership by VC or hedge funds, but also 51% of the ownership has to be US residents, not necessarily citizens, but residents. Phase one is usually a proof of concept. And what the proof of concept is it's saying, hey, we think you guys would be interested in this. Check it out. Phase two, after winning phase one, it's, hey, this is our prototype of the idea we showed you for phase one. Take a look at it now. And then phase three is commercializing that idea. Again, you can read the slide just as easily as I can, but $3.5 billion awarded annually. And you know what you're getting with the award sizes. So this is a really interesting slide from the Department of Energy. Basically, it just shows you a little bit more in depth of what I was saying. So phase one, feasibility, proof of concept. Phase two, you're working on the R&D and the prototypes. And then this talks a little bit about phase 2B, where you're working on, maybe getting the contract, and then again, federal contract, obviously. And then phase three is commercialization and commercialization assistance, focusing on, helping the US economy and getting you to that next stage. Okay, and to talk a little bit about broad agency announcements. They're continuous funding. That means that the contract periods last anywhere from 2 to 5 years. The award ceilings are from $100,000 to 65 million. That's a little bit of a misnomer. It's really around $1 million, but again, you could end up, depending on the broad agency announcement, in the 100,000 category. So why is the government funding private companies? There's two main reasons. The first one we're going to go through is they're looking for technology for themselves. So easiest example, the Department of Education is looking for virtual reality headsets for schools. So they know that they have a need and they want to fund this program in order to eventually use it. So how it looks is like this. First of all, they realize, hey, we want to get virtual reality into schools. So they post an opportunity for research and development funding. They see what is available for AR, VR, or virtual reality only, and they'll make an investment based off of that. And based off of what the SBR allows them to do is it allows them to see how you grow and how you take the initial funding that they gave you and what you use it for and what you do with it. And so they can see how you perform on the research and development, and then they could decide to become your customer. And so the second reason that the US government does this is seed money for private industry. They're trying to help the economy. The economy is, one of the key points of the government. They're looking for their tax money. And so you'll see on this next slide, there's an interesting statistic. Essentially, out of every dollar that goes into a company from grant money, they see a $2.30 rate of return. Yeah, it's right here. Return on investment is $2.30 on every dollar invested. In addition to that, again, they want to grow the economy. With a strong economy, they're able to do all that much more, and job creation keeps everyone happy. But again, they do see their taxes at the end of the day. Okay, so what grants end up funding is it can be a few different things that, again, you can read off of this slide. What I want to talk about is the 7% profit. It's really a 5 to 10% depending on the agency, but usually built into the grant, there's 5 to 10% that you can use for whatever you want. So that being said, you don't have to necessarily pay salaries of an R&D staff or anything like that. With this 7%, you're able to pay for marketing, sales, consultants, etc. Just be aware that the majority of the money, 90 to 95%, does need to be focused almost exclusively on research and development. Different agencies have different requirements. So not every agency is the same when it comes to reporting. There's different ways that they operate. Again, once you win the grant, we could definitely talk about that. So research and development funding does lead to business to government contracts. Here are a few, not even all, but a few of the programs that end up with business to government contracts. So here we are jumping in right into the second part of our presentation. This is the opportunities for 2021. So the first one we're going to be looking at is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Their submission deadline is May 2021. Again, they're looking for a project pitch and then a full proposal. Phase one is usually $100,000. Phase two is usually $400,000. And they have an evaluation time of 5 to 7 months. There are a few agencies that have fast funding mechanisms, but a lot of them you'll see that the average is around 5 to 7 months. So that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology of the U.S. Department of Commerce. The second one is the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation is one of the ones that I was mentioning that is altruistic in its funding methods, meaning that they're looking to grow the U.S. economy. They do not, as far as I know, no company that I know of has one contracting with them from an SBIR. Maybe an interesting data company could, but what they're looking for is a project pitch to a full proposal. Their deadline is March 2021. Their phase one is one of the most generous of all the SBIRs. It's $256,000. And then again, phase two is going to be $750,000. In terms of timeline, you're looking at a project pitch of 1 to 2 weeks, and then the project pitch evaluation can be up to 3 weeks. Again, the evaluation time is going to be around 3 to 5 months. So they're also not necessarily so fast. I was speaking to someone recently, and they submitted in August. They have still not heard back from them. So it takes a little bit of time to hear back from some of the agencies, just so you know. Okay, the next we're going to talk about is the Department of Defense SBIR. And I rolled a lot of them up into one slide. There's quite a few agencies under the Department of Defense. They released, their submission opened today. And I believe focus topics were released for quite a few of their agencies. Their deadline is February 18th. And so the phase one is usually $150,000. The phase two is $1 million. Evaluation time is 3 to 5 months. The DoD SBIR is a really, really great opportunity because there's such a wealth and breadth of technologies that they're looking for. Something to absolutely be aware of. Army Applications Lab. This is a broad agency announcement. So like I was saying, this isn't necessarily just for small companies. Although the Army Applications Lab has been on the cutting edge, they've been doing fast funding, like I was saying. You see the evaluation time is 30 to 60 days. The reason they're doing this is at least my theory is that they're competing with the Air Force. The Air Force also has a fast funding mechanism. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they're having a little bit of friendly competition there. But they have ongoing focus areas for quite a few technologies, very robust. The average estimated award size is $2 million. It's a really robust, great program. Check out their website. If you just type in Army Applications Lab into Google, you can see their website. It's very well done. Okay, this opportunity is not well known yet. The U.S. Army Engineering Research and Development Center, ERDC, or ERDC Works. Their submission deadline is March 1st. It's a broad agency announcement. The average estimated award is $300,000 to $500,000. They're also, so to speak, fast funding, 60 to 90 days. One interesting thing about them is I believe the last time I checked, they only had 50 companies that have applied. So they're really, really new, and it's a fresh opportunity. So definitely one of the more interesting opportunities out there. One thing you should know is that if you just look at the focus areas, I mean, you can already see it's mostly engineering and structures is what they're looking for, but they're quite robust. Lastly, what everyone probably has already heard of a little bit, it's AFWorks. Again, they're wrapped into the DoD. They are releasing today. Their deadline is February 18th. Phase one is $50,000. Phase two, $750,000. The evaluation time is 1 to 2 months. That's what they say on their website. But recently it's been a little bit slower, just to be fair. So just just be aware of that. That being said, AFWorks, one of the most significant parts of them is the fact that they have um, not only fast funding, but they lead to a contract. Quite a few of the opportunities end up in contracts, which is great for the companies we work with. So the next slide is AFWorks is a three-phase process, similar to almost every other SBIR. Um, they're doing a proof of concept study, and then a prototype, and then lastly a potential purchase. So further open topic, they're looking for, like I was saying, any technology. Um, so there's a lot here. They really are trying to push the limits of federal funding and take a more VC style approach to what they're doing. Phase one is $50,000, as I said earlier. But what's interesting is that the phase three is commercialization assistance starting at $3 million, or business to government contracts, or it could be both, depending on how you play your cards and if you win. Um, AFWorks is significant because you don't necessarily need to go through phase one. So for a lot of the companies we're working with or speaking with, or even on this webinar, um, phase one is small change, but phase two is definitely interesting. So if you have a memorandum of understanding from an Air Force stakeholder, you can completely skip phase one and go directly to phase two, which is great because it takes a lot less of your time and you can get directly into the meat and get through to that, hopefully that follow along contract. All right, so some of our winners. So we've had quite a few, but here are some of the main ones. We had an AI facial recognition. um, they won phase one of AFWorks, and they're securing an MOU. um, the rest of them I'll let you guys read. I'll pause for a second here and give some time to people who are typing out their questions to type their questions. All right. So one slide that should be interesting to everyone. Three whys for a strong submission. So three things you have to address when you're applying to these agencies. What I like to say is that any application, whether it's a job application, college application, grant application, it's an application. You need to speak to the person that you're giving it to. So why should they care about you or your tech? Why should the private sector care, and why should the agency care? Um, it makes sense. You have to speak to them in a way that they understand and the way they can comprehend. Because unfortunately, what happens is you can have the best technology in the world, right? But if you do not make it speak to them, they're not interested at the end of the day. And so you need to frame your technology in a way that they can understand it, that they say, hey, this is what we want. So our keys, at the very least, to winning federal grants is you have to understand the federal funding system. So each agency has its own phase one requirements, and they have their own song and dance in addition. No, but you have to have multiple opportunities. You do not want to apply to just one grant and then wait 6 months for it to come through. You want to be working and getting exposure, because again, one lesser known side of all of this is the money's great, but exposure to the federal government is invaluable. Um, at the end of the day, you want them to either A, become a client, or B, know about your technology, know what you can do, know what you're capable of. That's great. And then lastly, on this slide, write and tell a story of your tech in a concise and compelling manner. Um, like I was saying before, you could have the best tech in the world. You need to be able to say, this is why you guys need it. Um, Now, for the third part of our presentation, a little bit about us. Um, Eagle Point Funding, we're a division of the Freemind Group. We've had over 20 years of experience in working with federal funding, and have won over $1.6 billion of awards. We have a robust team of professionals, writers, project managers, and we've been working quite a bit, and recently things have been picking up because what's happened a little bit with COVID is that a lot more companies are turning to federal funding as opposed to, the classic consumer, or getting commercialized initially. A lot of the goals have changed. So it's looking, hey, can we make this work? Is this something that can fit into our picture that can help our company grow? So what to expect if you want to work with us? So let's say we meet. I'll just go through the everything before the signing of the contract. But if we meet, we have a discovery call after this webinar and say, hey, your tech's really cool. What we'll do is we'll have an internal conversation with our grant writing department and make sure that we can win for you. So our goal is to make sure that the companies we work with win. So we have a vetting process when it comes to working with people. But if you were to be able to, get through all that and get past our grant writing department, which I'm sure a lot of you can, we'll have an intro after signing the contract, an intro within 24 or 72 hours. And then we assign you a team, a grant writer and a project manager, and they build a step-by-step plan for you with detailed events, knowing exactly what's on the horizon, what you guys are looking for, what we're going to do. We don't limit ourselves when it comes to our grant submissions. That being said, we guarantee a minimum of 5. Usually a lot of our clients rest between 7 and 10. The reason for that is that there is work put on the company's end. We do a lot of the grant writing, but at the end of the day, it's critical that the companies we work with assist us and help us with the information, because that is what really brings the most value. Coordinated offense on these applications is what leads to winning these grants. All right. Lastly, there's my beautiful face again. What I'm going to do now is I am going to answer all of the questions in the Q&A. Feel free to type anything out, ask away. I am more than happy to answer whatever there needs to be. Okay. Regarding non-dilutive, the federal government might not want to get involved, but contracts come with the condition of governance or ownership, capital source, origin, or investors. Can you speak to that? What decisions companies might make today would or won't cause problems or deal breakers later in the process? So Greta, yeah. So in terms of them not getting involved, it's mostly from what I've seen, it's again where you have your research and development taking place. If you have it outside of the United States, that could cause problems. If you have, the ownership of your company is not U.S. residents, or it's mostly VC owned, that could lead to problems. And so, yeah, those are two deal breakers that come up quite a bit. So, I mean, I could get a little bit more granular, but you might have to be a little more specific. Okay, so Yuvraj, yes, 51% US residents. So it could be green card holders. H-1B, I would have to double check because I don't want to confuse anyone else. But I believe you just have to be a US resident. Greta, I can definitely send you a copy of the slides. Kevin, these opportunities are posted with specific problem they'd like to solve, rather than the technology they'd like to see. I can solve a million things with AI or machine learning, but I wonder if they've targeted it for, I'd like to use AI for better missile targeting. Yes. So to answer your question, it depends on the agency. So an agency like the NSF has broad topics that you can, inquire with their project managers a little bit more about. But that being said, the Air Force AFWorks, their last solicitation, it was 20.3. They had a 75-page document that had very, very, very specific, exactly like what you're saying, AI for missiles. They were looking for very specific technologies. That being said, you could find those pamphlets online. I could even potentially send out the website a little bit later. But also, yeah, another person who did that as well was NASA. NASA closed on January 8th, so they're already done. But they had a very specific release of their focus topics of what exactly they wanted. Anonymous attendee, I will be sharing the slides. Anonymous attendee, what's Eagle Point's pricing structure if we want to work with you? Any fees at risk? Okay, so Eagle Point Funding takes a retainer of $36,000 for a 9-month period. During that 9-month period, we usually apply anywhere from 5 to 10 different solicitations, or even NASA allowed you to apply for the same solicitation multiple times if you had those focus categories. Yeah, I would love to discuss the pricing structure a little bit further. We could definitely do that on a call. If you want to book a call with the QR code, we can definitely discuss. Okay. Have government grants funded healthcare fintech? The short answer, yes. Long answer, almost any company can be funded. It's almost surprising in which companies have been funded in the past. What they're looking for is that it could be a small piece of technology that fits into the larger picture, but they might be interested in it. One example I like to use is that we had a company we spoke with that worked on a robotic pancake flipper, and they ended up winning government funding because the robotics behind their pancake flipper was so novel. And so again, fintech, the short answer is yes. It depends on what kind of fintech. If it's blockchain, there's a full blockchain distributed ledger focus topic with the NSF. If it's, again, big data is another. It's been a focus topic with AFWorks in 20.3. It really depends on what tech we're talking about. If it's stock analysis, the federal government might not be as interested. Thank you, Greta. And Greta, I will send you the slides. Okay, Bob, we are providing satellite and cellular networks globally to maritime. Have you seen opportunities in this space? So in short, yes. It depends on the use case. We should set up a call to discuss a little further. I know for a fact that NASA was looking for communications technologies for space, but I believe that there are other wireless technologies being sought out. I know, again, the NSF and their really easy focus topics, wireless is one of them. So in short, yes, we could talk a little bit more focused if we set up a call. Anonymous attendee, anything you can share on Eagle Point's percent win rate when working with you guys? Any success metrics we can share? Thanks, great presentation. Thank you. In terms of success metrics, it depends on the company. It depends on the grant. A lot depends on what your tech is. If you have an artificial intelligence technology that's applicable to almost any government agency, our success rate is going to be way higher than it would be if we had a company producing smart projectors for classrooms. So let's say the smart projectors for classrooms was only applicable to the Department of Education. Our success rate is going to be lower. We probably wouldn't even take that client on, honestly, but our success rate would be lower with them. I would say generally, depending on the grant, we hover around 65%. Ben, can the 36K retainer for Eagle Point be taken from the government grant instead of out of pocket? The short answer is the long answer is we do this because we found that we are more successful when the company we're working with is serious about this. For example, if we work completely on contingency, what has happened in the past, and a few bad apples ruined a bunch, but they said, talk to us when you win a grant. Until then, don't bother. And so that led us to the retainer structure that we have now. It's unfortunate, but again, we could talk a little bit more about, we're slightly flexible on the 36,000, how we structure it. I'm more than happy to discuss on a call. Jenny, no problem. It was a pleasure. Okay, anonymous attendee, trying to understand the strings attached to this sort of funding. If a company develops a technology that has a military and commercial application and accepts funding from one of these military branches, is there a contractual obligation that the company move forward with the military application, even if the commercial application is more profitable? What I'd say to this is it depends on your goal. Let's say you do a phase 1 proof of concept on, I don't know, a new tank. And this new tank They decide, we like your new tank, we want to fund it. If between phase 1 and phase 2 you realize, hey, we don't want to make tanks anymore, we want to make battle robots are more profitable. Just making up fun examples. Um, and you want to stop making these tanks, you just won't win at phase 2. So you'll have won at phase 1, but you won't make it to phase 2. I hope that answers your question. Mark Dalimeyer. My technology involves energy disruption and recovery tracking within AI limits. It would be interesting to see if we could use our decoupling details that is proprietary. This detail would give us further benefit. My question is if we can somehow create a specialized introduction that would identify our unique understanding of decoupling and also for utilizing NDA for some sense of security. Absolutely. We could sign an NDA and we can discuss this further. I don't want to get too deep into this right now over the webinar, but again, Mark, we could schedule another call and discuss. I think I sent you the NDA last time. If not, email me. I could send it to you again. Anshu, I will send you the slides so that you can share them. Yes, I will send them to you at that address. George, I will send you the slides as well. Slides, absolutely. Anonymous attendee. Also, if a company accepts, for example, a phase 2 grant, does the government grant maker usually share own rights to the technology or IP? Okay, so for broad agency announcements, but rarely, they sometimes take IP. But for small business innovation and research grants, they generally do not mess with IP. So that means you own your rights and your technology. They want to become a client of yours. They don't want to own your tech. So they want to buy from you. They don't want to be you. Let's put it that way. For some of the phased funding, this is Eddie. For some of the phased funding, do we have to start at phase 1 or would it be possible to start at phase 3? If so, what would enable that jump? Eddie, you can. In short, the long answer is that you probably would need a stakeholder within that organization to say, hey, either a memorandum of understanding saying, hey, we like this technology, we're probably going to use it if we can get it past the goalpost, or a letter of intent. Depending on the agency, there are different structures in place to have direct to phase 2s and direct to phase 3s. We could talk a little bit more about it in person. That's a great question, Rose. What if we have competitive companies? If we have competitive companies, it's not a zero-sum game. So if Osher Inc. applies for an AI grant and Radensky Inc. applies for the same AI grant, and we're working for both of them, we want both of those companies to win, to sound like a parent. Essentially, usually they'll fund more than one company. So when they have a focus topic release, they're not funding a single company. With some broad agency announcements, they are, but generally they do not. The best case scenario for us, and it's a rare scenario, but the best case scenario is that we win both grants, or maybe even 3 grants within the same focus topic. I hope that answers your question, but in general, it's not I'd say to sum it up, it's not an all or nothing. And even if one AI company, if Osher Inc. does one version of AI, Radensky Inc. very likely has slightly different technology. I don't think we've ever taken on 2 clients with literally doing the same exact thing. Okay, anonymous attendee. Thank you for trying to answer my question about military versus commercial application of the same product, not tank versus robot. Let me clarify. If a company accepts a phase 2 and is successful, is there an obligation to go on to a phase 3 contract with the military when the company may want to move forward with a purely commercial application? You are not obligated to continue. As a matter of fact, it's in its own right, it's a privilege to continue. You want to be chosen for the most part, but if you do not, you're not obligated. That being said, if you use the money for non-R&D purposes, that's where you start having problems. But in terms of the technology, and once you get past the phases, you can 100% decide to go a different direction and not pursue a phase 3. Stefano, I will send the slides to you. Okay, so Yuvraj, is the 51% ownership requirement only for SBIR, or is it also required for BAA and AFWERX? Okay, it's only required for SBIR, but AFWERX is SBIR. Broad agency announcements allow foreign companies to apply. So if you're looking, broad agency announcements could be anyone, and there's no limit on how big your company has to be. So there's a lot of really cool grants available from broad agency announcements. But that being said, you could be playing in a larger field. I will put this recording on YouTube after this. Greta, I'll be more than happy to talk to you then. No problem. Do you also help with identifying partners? If we are not interested in full funding, but interested in becoming a sub, for example, before a month, I would have said no to this question. Recently, we've started the Deep Tech Showcase, where we are starting to connect companies to one another and starting to create a network of both investors, federal agencies, and corporate tech scouts. And in that framework, we are helping companies latch in together and start working together. Okay, now for the chat. Sorry, I've been going only off the QA up until now. Let me see. Okay, this is going to take a little bit. Okay. George, I do not have those statistics in terms of the total amount of reward for EPF in 2020. I do not have that. So Jenny Sue, for grants given to healthcare, yes. Our sister company is exclusively in healthcare, the Freemind Group, and they've been extremely successful. I recommend you go check them out. Healthcare is one of the let's put it this way, the largest areas of federal grants. How do we select which agency to target? Do you review our proposal and provide some guidance as part of our process? Karthik, our guidance, essentially, we look for the grants, we write the grants, and we apply to the grants. So we do a lot of the legwork. So if we were to work together, you would not be, we wouldn't be reviewing, we would be doing. We would be writing them. Can a company apply to multiple agencies with the same project? So Mike, with the multiple agencies with the same project, I'm 90% sure the answer is yes, but I think there's some limitation, like it can't be verbatim. Like you shouldn't take a grant application and copy and paste it. That being said, I think it should be a little bit more nuanced than just the same exact thing. But if there's similar fields being looked for, so let's say NASA and Space Force are looking for a very similar thing, there's no issue with applying to both. What cut do we take? We take 5%. Karthik Bogla. What about IP? If we get government funding, are we expected to make our IP public? No, you do not have to make your IP public. What's our criteria to working with companies and average fees? I think I already answered this. We charge a retainer of $36,000. Criteria is a company that has dual use technology that is innovative and being looked for by these agencies. What would the total amount a company needs to pay your company for a grant project? I think I just answered that. I'll send you a copy of the slides. I'll send you a copy of the slides. I think I answered this. Okay, perfect. I'll get to the last. Okay. Anonymous attendee, how many topics would you apply for? Healthcare and hardware? Healthcare is huge. There's a lot of different subcategories. It would depend on the technology. Hardware is also extremely robust. There is a NSF topic for that alone. And there's more topics from Army Application Labs, AppWorks, NASA, the DOE. There's a lot out there. Rose, do we have a maximum capacity of the companies we work with? Answer is yes. there have been times where we stop bringing on new companies completely because our grant writers are too busy. Because it's a 9-month contract, companies come on, companies go off, but also because of that, we have to be cognizant. So there are times where we do not bring on any new clients at all whatsoever. Ben, I will send you the slides after this. Okay, I think I answered almost all of the questions. There's two more. No, I think I've answered almost all of your questions. If there's any more, I'll be on for the next 5 minutes. For everyone else, I will send you a copy of the recording, as well as hopefully the slides. Feel free, any last questions you guys have, feel free to ask though, otherwise. Okay, Stefano asked, how do we preserve IP? How we preserve IP is we sign NDAs on our side. So even before we start working together, most of the time we already have an NDA in place. Most of the time we use our NDA because we have one specific to this grant writing process. But if you have your own NDA that you want us to sign, we are not opposed. But depending on the NDA and what the structure is, do not send me an NDA 5 minutes before a call. But that being said, if you give me a solid hour, we could get it back to you before our call. Yes, you can book a call with me. I'll send the link to book a call with me as well, with the recording. If you want, you could also scan the QR code on the screen. Is the retainer taken from the government award or upfront? It is 18,000 is taken upon signing contract. Another 18,000 is taken about 5 months into the contract. It can be out of the government award if we've won in the 5th month, but usually, initially, we haven't won yet, so it's ahead of the government award. It's upfront. Yes, we do the white paper as well. Okay, I may have answered this, but what's the turnaround time on your grant writers team getting back to us, whether we have a good shot at a grant? It depends on you. So if you book a call with me today and we think it's a good idea, it'll probably be another week before you speak to an expert. And then based off of that, the expert is the one who would bring the idea to the grant writing team. And so the grant writing team would see it within 2 weeks. It could be even shorter, depending on how rushed we are. For example, to get into this round of AFWorks, well, you would really need to get moving, right? So if you're trying to do that, we could speed things up. That being said, we would need to start somewhere. Any more questions? I'm still here. All right, great. So if no one else asks anything in the next 2 minutes, we'll wrap things up. It was a pleasure speaking with all of you, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And feel free to reach out to me by email or to book a call. More than happy to talk about individual situations and to deal with the questions one-on-one. So James, can we take more of the back end and reduce cash up front? We could discuss it. Usually no. Eugene, It's unclear our profit system. So the way we work is we work on a 9-month basis. And in those 9 months, we apply anywhere from 5 to 10 grants. Because we have professionals with experience in grant writing doing this service, we charge a retainer. The retainer is $36,000. On top of that, we charge a 5% success fee. I hope that was a little bit clearer, Eugene. Let me know if not. I'll be more than happy to address any specific questions. All right, perfect. I'm wrapping it up for today. Feel free to contact me. One last one. Sent me a chat. Perfect. Yeah, I look forward to speaking with you, Greta. And then otherwise, have a good rest of your day.